What's going on, guys? Today we're getting into chapter 6. Once again, if you guys want to join the business and finance group chat, it's in the comments, a phone number to text, and I'll add you. We already got over 10 people in the group, so it should be a help to you guys. So today, chapter 6, workers' compensation. You don't have to worry about this. There's pretty much no math in chapter 6. It has chapter 440 in it as well. That's pretty important, so we will go over that. It's a pretty long chapter. It's over 150 pages. So yeah, let's get right into it. Here's the table of contents. I have a few things highlighted if you guys want to pause and highlight it. These are pretty much my cheat sheets, the frequently asked questions. I use that a lot of the test. Let's get into page 6.5. When is workers' compensation coverage needed? The Florida's Workers' Compensation Act is applicable to any employer in the construction industry who employs one or more full or part-time employees. So in construction, every single one of your employees have to have workers' compensation. In a regular business, I think it's once you have 4 employees, that's when you need to get workers' compensation. Every contractor or subcontractor must, as a condition to receiving a building permit, show proof that workers' compensation has been secured. For all employees, provide a certificate of election to be exempt. Proof of workers' compensation coverage or a certificate of election to be exempt must be shown as a condition to the insurance or renewal of a certificate or registration of the contractor with the construction industry license boards. Construction industry is defined. All right. The following activities are not construction jobs, as that term is used in the workers' compensation statute. So there's everything. Have that highlighted. General contractor must purchase workers' compensation for the employees of the subcontractor. It does not make any difference that the subcontractor is an independent contractor. If there is a contractor-subcontractor relationship, the general contractor must still purchase workers' compensation coverage for the employees of the subcontractor. A general contractor must obtain a certificate of insurance from the subcontractor showing evidence that the subcontractor maintained workers' compensation during construction. If a contractor becomes liable to pay workers' compensation benefits for the employees of the subcontractor, the contractor is entitled to recover from the subcontractor all benefits to the contractor is required to pay, plus interest, unless the contractor, by written contract, has agreed to purchase coverage. A subcontractor who knowingly present false information as the existence of coverage when in fact there is none commits a third-degree felony. Avoiding or diminishing the amount of the payment of any workers' compensation premiums to a carrier or self-insurance fund commits a felony of the third degree. Excluded agricultural labor for which no coverage is required. The seasonal work must be completed in less than 30 days, provided such seasonal employment does not exceed 45 days in a calendar year. A sole proprietor or partnership in the construction industry, regardless of whether he's an independent contractor, is considered to be an employee. A sole proprietorship partner or officer or a corporation who is actively engaging in the construction industry and who elects to be exempt from workers' compensation coverage may not recover workers' compensation benefits. The employee cannot be required to sign a statement that he will not seek to obtain workers' compensation benefits if injured on your job. An insurer must be required to offer a deductible to an employer of a credit investigation, applicable premium reduction percentage, miscellaneous values, self-insurance pools or funds, individual or freestanding self-insured. Individual employees may choose to insure themselves in section 440. Boom, boom, boom. I don't really see anything here. Failure to obtain workers' compensation coverage. The injured employee can require you to pay workers' compensation benefits individually or can sue you in civil court. The Florida Division of Workers' Compensation can close your business down if there is no coverage, whether or not an accident occurs. It is also a misdemeanor of the second degree, and you could lose your license. Before the accident occurs, a part of the safety program should include a drug-free workplace program. You should read through these, the employer responsibilities. The employer has a choice of physician for the injured worker. So that might be on your test. They might ask who has the choice for a physician, and it's the employer. An injured worker is not required to pay anything towards his medical bills. So one of the questions I had on my test was, how much does an employee have to pay for his medical bills when he was injured on the job? And it was 0, because an injured worker is not required to pay anything towards his medical bills. Basically, the injured worker is entitled to 2/3 of his average weekly wage, which is, I think it's 60 something percent, 63, 67%. I'm not sure. It will say later on. The first 7 days of disability are not paid unless the injured worker is off work for more than 21 days. The maximum weekly benefit is set each January 1st, and the maximum for 2016 is $863. So this is important, not paid unless the injured worker is off work for more than 21 days. So if an injured worker was off work for 20 days, he's not getting anything. And the first 7 days are not paid that he was off. Very important. You will see that again. Should death occur, the employee beneficiaries are entitled up to $150,000 in death benefits plus $7,500 in funeral costs. I was in a class, funny story real quick. I was in a class and the teacher asked, how much is someone's life worth? And I was reading the book and I said, I read it here, should death occur, the employee's beneficiaries are entitled up to $150,000. So I was like, I mean, a life is worth $150,000. That's what the contractor manual says, and you have to pay $7,500 for the funeral. Of course, that was messed up for me saying that, and his question was saying that a life isn't worth any dollar amount. But in my opinion, the contractor manual does say a life is worth $150,000. So let me know in the comments down below what you guys think. Okay, responsibilities after the accident. There can possibly be a 25% reduction in the employee's workers' compensation benefits if an accident does in fact occur. The injured worker has 30 days in which to advise the employer of a fact that an accident occurred. So the injured worker has 30 days to advise the employer of the fact that an accident occurred. You'll see that again. Following the accident, within 7 days of knowledge of an accident, the employer must report to the carrier notice of injury on a specific form provided by the Division of Workers' Compensation. Failure to report this injury to the carrier may involve up to a $2,000 fine per occurrence. First aid cases requiring treatment on site that do not require medical treatment for which charges will be incurred and do not disable the employee for more than 7 days do not need to be reported. It should not be noted, however, that the accident has to be recorded on a notice of injury. If the case later meets the reporting requirements, the notice of injury must be filed within 7 days after employee has knowledge of the changed status. The Florida Workers' Compensation Law also requires the reporting of an on-the-job injury accident resulting in death of an employee within 24 hours to the Division of Workers' Compensation Bureau. Employees must retain a copy of all information contained in the first report of accident, including the actual forms, for not less than 2 years and 6 months. Any violation of the reporting accidents can subject the employer to a penalty of up to $500. Return to work process. An employee is not required to return to work until so advised. Many times the physician advises the insurance provider, even the employer, of the return to work date, but not the employee. Therefore, a written verification of the employee of return to work must be made. Training and education, financial impact of workers' compensation on the contractor. Employees are classified by the types of jobs their employees perform and are manually rated per $100 of payroll. For example, roofers have a classification code of 5551 and pay, as of 2016, their premium at the rate of $18.60 per $100 of payroll. If the employer has a payroll of $100,000, his manual determined premium would be $18,600. your compensation to other employees within your industry is known as the experience modification factor, experience mod. Frequency of your on-the-job accidents and the severity of those injuries over 3 years compared to the employers similar to you. Okay, I don't have anything here. I have this highlighted, but doesn't mean anything really. I mean, you can highlight it if you want to pause the video. Okay, frequently asked questions. This is awesome. This is where I would go to if I ever got a workers' compensation question. Most of the time, the answers were here, or they were in the chapters that we just read, but mostly in here. So who needs workers' compensation cover? Once again, this said it in the beginning, construction employees who have one or more employees. And right here, that's what I was saying, non-construction employees who have 4 or more employees, including any non-exempt business owners. So you have to have, I guess, more than 4 employees to get workers' compensation. So if you have 3 or 4 employees, you don't have to have workers' comp. And then agriculture, when there are 6 regular employees, we read about that there. So go through all of these, read through this, frequently asked questions. It's really good. What should an out-of-state employer know about Florida's coverage requirements? This is really good information here. Does the injured worker pay any part of my workers' compensation insurance premium? It is the employer's responsibility to pay the entire premium for workers' compensation insurance coverage. A question that I got on the exam was asking how much money does the employer need to take out of the paycheck for taxes and stuff like that, and they threw this in here, and the question was they were paying this amount of taxes and this amount in other things, and how much did they have to pay in workers' compensation. So they tried to trick me, and the question was 0 because the employers were responsible for workers' compensation. Where do I get a supply of injury report forms that I'm required to complete when one of my employees has injuries? Your insurance carrier is required to provide you a supply of the form WC1, first report of injury or wellness. What kind of employee injuries are covered? What injuries are not covered? Compensation will not be paid in several other instances. Yeah, so read through that. Drug-free workplace, a 5% premium credit from your insurance carrier if you have a drug-free workplace. What if an employer refuses to take a drug test? Right there. And then how many days does the employee have to retest the specimen if he or she wishes to contest a positive test result during the 180-day period? That's for the drug-free workplace. Injured worker frequently asked question right here. This is everything for the worker side. When should my employer report the injury to the insurance company? 7 days after their knowledge. The insurance company must send you an informational brochure within 3 days. All right. Will I be paid if I lose time for work? Right there it says it again. You are not paid for the first 7 days of disability. However, if you lose time because your disability extends over 20 days, you may be paid for the first 7 days by the insurance company. How much will I be paid? Right here will be 66.23% of your average weekly wage. Your average weekly wage is calculated using wages earned 13 weeks prior to your injury, not counting the week in which you were injured. Right here, very important. Your average weekly wage is calculated using wages earned 13 weeks prior to your injury. When will I get my first check? You should receive the first check within 21 days after reporting your injury to your employer. If I'm only temporarily disabled, how long can I get the checks? You can receive temporary partial disability payments or a combination of the two benefits during the continuance of your disability for no more than a maximum of 104 weeks. What is the time limit for filing a petition for benefits? In general, there is a 2-year period to file a petition. Coverage requirements, construction industry, we went over this right here. Construction exemptions are valid for a period of 2 years until revocation is filed or until revoked by the division. Not anything here. Enforcement, job site inspection, stop work order. The penalty is equal to 2 times the amount the employer would have paid in manual premiums with the preceding 2-year period. Read through that. Fatality reporting, 24 hours. We already knew that. A lot of like repetition in this chapter. So here is chapter 440. You should pause the video now to see what I have highlighted here. So let's get into it. Construction industry means for profit activities involving any building, clearing, filling, excavation, and then more. 20 days of such notice. Here, a certificate of election to be exempt, which is issued on or after January 1st, 2013, in accordance with this section, is valid for 2 years after the effective date stated thereon. 2 years from the issue date. Notice requirement, fewer than 4 employees. Like, this is stuff we already went through, coverage. If injury is caused by the knowing refusal of the employee to use a safety appliance or observe a safety rule required by statute or lawful adopted by the department and brought prior to the accident to the employee's knowledge, or if injury is caused by the knowing refusal of the employee to use a safety appliance provided by the employer, the compensation as provided in this chapter should be reduced by 25%. I think this is kind of ridiculous. Let me know what you guys think. If you tell someone, hey, you gotta wear glasses when you're using a saw, and then he loses his eye, and it's like, man, I told you to wear glasses when you're using the saw, and you still gotta pay him. If an employer fails to secure compensation as required by this chapter, the department shall assess against the employers a penalty not to exceed $5,000 for each employee. There's the drug-free workplace again. This is drug-free workplace. An employer not having a drug testing program shall ensure that at least 60 days elapse between a general one-time notice to all employees that a drug testing program is being implemented and the beginning of actual drug testing. An employer having a drug testing program in place prior to July 1st, 1990 is not required to provide a 60-day notice period. Liquidated damages 30%. Okay, the department shall assess a penalty of $1,000 per day against an employer for each day that the employer conducts business operations that are in violation of stop work order. This is a stop work order. So if you get a stop work order question, this is usually a good place to go. Boom, boom, boom. This has like more penalties here. You just read through that, pause it. Compensation is not allowed for the first 7 days of the disability. Once again, we know that. If the injury results in more than 21 days of disability, compensation is allowed from the commencement of the disability. Once again, we know that. See, this chapter has a lot of, like, it's repetitive. Boom, medical records right here. The physician shall prescribe such care in writing. The employer or carrier shall not be responsible for such care until the prescription for attendant care is received by the employer and carrier. The carrier has the right to transfer the care of an injured employee from the attending healthcare provider if an independent medical examination determines that the employee is not making appropriate progress in recuperation. Oh, this is an important one. Upon the written request of the employee, the carrier shall give the employee the opportunity for one change of physician. See if there's anything else right here. Determination of pay. So once again, this is very important. They're going over it, the 13 weeks again. So read through this. Compensation for disability, there's the 66.67%. Once again, very repetitive in this chapter. Temporary total disability, right here. There. If you want to pause and highlight those. Temporary partial disability, subject to subsection 7. In case of temporary partial disability, compensation shall be equal to 80% of the difference between 80% of the employee's average weekly wage and the salary wages and other. There's the compensation for death again. It's the $150,000. However, upon the surviving spouse's remarriage, the spouse shall be entitled to a lump sum payment equal to 26 weeks of compensation at the rate of 50% of the average weekly wage. Right there, the children, the brothers, the sisters, surviving spouse. Notice of injury shall advise his or her employer of the injury within 30 days after the date of or initial manifestation of the injury. Right here, the 2 years for the filing petitions, we saw that. Carrier must pay the first installment of compensation for total disability or death benefits or deny compensability no later than 14th calendar day. Right there. You can highlight that. I don't think there's anything left in here, but we'll go through it. Oh yeah, there is a few. Boom, boom, boom. If you want to pause and highlight that. It's stuff that we went over in the beginning of the chapter if you want to highlight it too. So you have multiple ways to pretty much find the answer. Anti-fraud reward program awards of up to $25,000 may be paid to persons providing information to the Department of Financial Services. Reemployment of injured worker. Once again, we went over this. The reemployment assessment within 30 days after the time such assessment is complete shall have 15 days after the date. Within 15 days of receipt of the assessment report or notice of the employee's election. All right, there we go. There's chapter 6. Once again, make sure you guys like and subscribe down below. And if you guys want to join the group chat, make sure to text me.